roughly.
Actually doesn't give out that information,
Okay.
so we're not sure, but one of the biggest barriers.
So, but you as a community would know roughly.
But there's
like,
about 300 in New Brunswick
Okay.
for all of the
Well, I'm just curious because to bring the
Yeah, no, I'm
kids
curious
together.
too. That you ask them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of families that don't know. They just don't know that they have services. Abby tells me that this is what's happening. They're like, okay, but the Department of Education, partnered with NDHHS would be wonderful. You would see a different story in the deaf community. You really would. I do have a question before you start asking us questions if you have any. But just in regards to itinerant teachers, all of them are off.
They're all.
What you have. No, I'm kidding. That's what they used to do. Yeah, that's what they would do. They would to deaf students. So confused. No, but seriously, Joanne was shocked. Like, that's how deaf students were treated. Like, don't stop signing, stop signing. I was like, what's going on? Thanks, Leanne. But itinerant teachers, they're not qualified. My experience going into the K-12 system, and I work with deaf children, and the signing capability is it's like, what is your name? Holy fuck, pardon my language. But absolutely they don't care. They have someone in place. They don't hire someone who signs. It doesn't matter if they can spell the alphabet or they're proficient. They don't focus on the child. They focus on they have someone in position. I've gone into so many schools and seen the same thing. So what's wrong with that?
How do we hire deaf people to help support deaf children in schools?
Ask the communities. Go into the communities and find them. So I'm deaf.
Need your help a little bit, I would say.
Yes, thank you. 100%. We appreciate that comment. Deaf people have American Sign Language as their first language. Itinerant teachers, their first language is English.
Okay.
They do not understand the deaf experience.
Okay.
Deaf children see these signs that they're signing and it's not signed properly, and they just don't progress. Maybe in kindergarten they hire an interpreter again. You need a deaf interpreter with young children because they need to be exposed to the language. And they need to learn it from a deaf person. A deaf interpreter is more visual, more expressive, is able to include all this cultural information and put it into the interpretation. The hearing interpreter hears the words and puts it out in sign language. There's a little boy that fell on the ground. A deaf person being like, oh, there was this boy who was like, and he fell and it was steel. Like, we go full into the story. And the deaf child gets that full visual aspect of the story. A hearing person, the deaf child or the boy fell. What did he fall on? Did it hurt? There's no information given. A deaf interpreter in the early ages, like for example, Allison had a deaf interpreter for 2 years. It was a pilot program, and once that was done, it was cut. Absi said, her language is great, she doesn't need it anymore.
Well, actually, they said that it was because it was affecting the kids. That was actually.
Oh, exactly. So having a deaf person in the classroom is affecting the hearing kids, but deaf interpreters can give all this information. You're worried about the hearing kids. They might get a little bit delayed because the deaf kid has to wait a little bit for an extra interpretation. And so where is that deaf child rights to that education, a full education? Okay, I've gone on long enough.
The other
Shelley.
thing that you may not be aware of is that when teachers go off to be teachers for the deaf, they're taught about oralism. They're not taught about American Sign Language. They're not given any of that side of the information. So when they come to the province, oh, we have to do this in oralism. They're not taught about it. They're not taught about language deprivation. and the impact that has on children as adults. They're not taught that. We have deaf teachers who've come here and said, can you hire me, please? Oh, we don't hire deaf teachers. So this is why we're saying, like...
I'd like to follow that up, but that's
like,
strange. Yeah.
Like, why isn't the Department of Education hiring a deaf person who has their deaf education to help you? Why not look out and do some research as to what happened in Ontario? What are they using in Ontario? What are they using in BC? Because those deaf people are successful. Do some research. Don't depend on these people. I mean, you hear Black Lives Matter, you hear Indigenous. Their main voice is, why do we have to teach you?
Right. That's fair.
Go and learn.
That's fair.
It's the same thing here.
So I think you've been very successful today in bringing attention. Oh, I want to say that. I want to thank you because personally, I can say that I don't have a lot of background, and I'll fully admit that. And you've definitely brought some new ideas to my mind. I had no idea, first of all, there was such displeasure with APSI. I've never heard that. So today,
think about the mental issues.
Yeah.
What?
They
No.
do third-party reviews with higher people that are on their board to do. Then it's not enough of us, so we get,
Or we
So-
don't have the right credentials.
or we don't get invited.
I understand.
And so they're like, oh, I was in a focus group for that review that just recently happened as a mom. There was 5 parents. There was 2 that had deaf children, and there was 3 that had hard of hearing. These 2, well, no, there's 3 because I was one of them. So these 3 were complain, negative. They're just concerned for their children and the hard of hearing. If they can access the language orally, APSI is successful.
I understand.
And so, in the review, one of the parents said they had maybe 5 minutes of potato because we took the rest of the hour and a half and we're negative. They said, APSI saved my life. What was in the review? We can't disclose what, because there wasn't enough parents there, but things like APSI saved my life.